That's all that I got out of this. Fondly, keep writing books. Please. Hello everyone, my name is Holly and I've had a good reading year so far, though I haven't been sharing it a whole lot here on YouTube or even Goodreads. I haven't logged a single book on my Goodreads this year. Sorry to those of you who follow me there. I've been slacking hardcore, but I'm using this video to kind of give me a clean slate. And don't worry, I will also be doing a most disappointing book so far this year video too, so you can see what has taken the L, but we're focusing on the W's today, the wins, the books that won my heart. And the first two are sequels to books that were my favorite from last year, so I can't go too in-depth about them. All I can do is gush that they lived up to my expectations. So the first one is the Sapphire Altar. This is the sequel to the Bladed Faith. Just a really quick, like, one-sentence synopsis of that book. We have Cyrus, our main character, who is the prince to a kingdom that was under siege and taken over, and now he fights to get it back. That's like a very, very simplistic way to explain things, but it'll have to do, or you'll just have to read it. This book here doesn't suffer from second book syndrome. The characters are far more complex. The main characters we got in the first one get more time to develop and evolve as the story progresses. The plot is explosive and the action just as pulse-pounding as it was in the previous novel. Not only were the twists like super well done, but how they were revealed was fantastic. More secrets are out, trust is broken, and more blood is spilled for our main character Cyrus, because everyone's trying to protect our cinnamon roll of a boy. And David Dalglish managed to yet again put a really interesting spin on gods and deities. I have one extreme negative, and boy, this deserves a 1 star. I can't believe the author did this. It's almost unforgivable. And that is I have to wait until 2024 to read book 3. That's the biggest sin imaginable. How dare you? Pick the series up. It deserves to be on your TBR. The next sequel is The Tyrant of Faith. No surprise to anyone, or even me, that this book made it to this list. This is the sequel to The Justice of Kings, and that book was like one of the 3 best books I read last year. I loved it so much. So I was highly anticipating this, and it did not disappoint in the slightest. We pick up right where the first book left off. We get a brand new setting to explore, the city of Sova. There's a bigger villain to deal with and some new intrigue. Basically what Swan did was take all the elements of book 1 and just amplified it. The world building takes a huge step up in this book. The epic nature of the cities, and most importantly, the other planes that were hinted at in book 1 are really brought to life in fantastic detail. The magic in this world is fleshed out like crazy. If that was one of your complaints of book 1, you need to read the sequel. And the magic is a lot more horrifying. It's like Cthulhu level. Helena, our main viewpoint character, she graces the cover of this book, continues to grow, and her views of those around her evolve, whether that's like positive or negative. I can't tell you that. Our band of heroes are pushed to the utter brink of despair and are just swatted around every corner. This is a masterful fantasy series. It should be on everyone's bookshelves. I never thought I'd find law and justice fun to read, but damn it, it works here. And it's fire. And then I have the Judas Blossom. I was very, very lucky to have the opportunity to read this book pretty early, actually like a few months ago, and I even got to blurb it, which is really cool. My very first blurb request, and thankfully the book didn't suck. I loved this one. In fact, I think it's Stephen's best work so far. I swear he just gets better and better with his novels, and this is not too far removed from The Coward, a previous novel that I enjoyed. That one took a more classic approach, while this one is an epic fantasy reimagining of the Mongol Empire's invasion of Persia. Quite ambitious, and we follow 4 different characters in this world. Though this is taking like a historical time period, the author really makes it his own and allows the readers to explore this area and environment, this like moment in time that we've heard so much about, and you kind of forget it's a fantasy until like the magic happens, and it's like, oh yeah, like this is a fantasy, there's magic. It's a nice surprise. I found this really fascinating, compelling, and I cannot wait to read the sequel. Untamed Sky. So it's very hard for me to love a novella. Can't believe this is even on this list, honestly. A novella on this list? Shocking. I find novellas to be more challenging and harder to read than full-length novels. But of course, it's going to be Fonda Lee who changes that for me. For a novella, this book is emotionally very strong. It evokes so many feelings. We follow Esther and learn very quickly her family was torn apart when a manticore killed her mother and a baby brother, leaving her with nothing. And Esther's path leads her to the king's royal muse, I believe that's what it was, where the giant birds called Rocks of Legend are flown to hunt manticores by their brave and dedicated trainers. Yes, this is a revenge story, but it's so much more than that. And in 150 pages, I was invested. It felt complete. I was able to envision this world and often felt engrossed in the story and the setting. I really enjoyed it. And yes, the ending is just as heart-wrenching as the beginning. So there's your warning. I need more Fonda Lee. That's all that I got out of this. Fonda Lee, keep writing books. Please. The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. Honestly, if anyone ever asks me for a book recommendation with like seafaring pirates, I'll point to this one because that's exactly what it is. And it checkmarked so many boxes for me, especially when it comes to a pirate and fantasy mashup, and it focuses on the theme of motherhood and getting the gang back together. That's like one of my favorite tropes. I love Kings of the Wild for that reason. We follow Amina, who is living with her daughter and her mother away from everyone, until a woman shows up at her home. The woman offers Amina a large sum of money for the return of her daughter, who she believes has been kidnapped. And as for anyone, Amina needs the small fortune that has been placed before her, and she decides to take on this challenge. Amina soon discovers that she is not only going to have to fight other people, but monsters and non-humans as well to even get close to the kidnappers. I'm happy to mention to a lot of readers that this fantasy is less political and more classic quest adventure, and I think that's going to entice a lot of readers. That's not to say there's not like a lot of complex stuff going on in the world, because there's so much detail, but I found it overall just really fun and relaxing. The Indian Ocean setting takes us back a few centuries. Ships are powered by black powder, aka like gunpowder, I believe, if I remembered correctly. We encounter enchantments and mythical beasts and other worldly characters on our hero's journey. I really enjoyed it. I will be honest, I did go into it with low expectations because this author in general is very hyped, and maybe that helped my enjoyment, but I recommend checking it out. And then I have the Sword Defiant. If you are looking for a book that has a Lord of the Rings vibe to it, is super classic old school fantasy, then I think I could recommend this because it really felt that way. It's one of those stories that takes place after the main villain has been defeated and what happens after that. It's almost like a little therapy session. It very much took a video game approach too. We have a group of characters who go on a quest like adventure to many different locations, like a cozy hamlet, a dark forest, and even like a crumbling magical city. There's your typical D&D fantasy races like dwarves, ogres, changelings, elves. It's very nerdy, and I very much love that. I personally find this stuff comforting. I love reading books like this from time to time, if not all the time. It's very traditional. It's very much the opposite of this author's previous series, which I found to be leaps and bounds more unique. Sure, this one felt safer, but I didn't mind that, and you can argue it's packed full of detail when it comes to all the history that this world has. I think it's fun. I got completely immersed in it. Every character's moral compass is just like spinning erratically, and you just don't know most of the time whether they are good or evil or like in between. Everyone brings up points along the journey that are all valid, so you're just not sure who to trust, who to root for, who to like hug, you know? Navigating this strange world with this group of characters in particular spotlights fantasy in a new light, though it still felt familiar. And I think that's why I enjoyed myself so much. And it found a spot on this list. The most recent book that I finished actually on this list is Savage Legion, and it's a big thanks to Simon & Schuster for giving me a chance to try this series out. They actually sent over the entire trilogy for me. Like, that's amazing. You are way too kind. So I picked up Savage Legion. By the way, Savage Crowns right here just came out, I believe. It's the conclusion, so like you can read this entire trilogy today, which is freaking exciting. I had been interested in this one for years, so I picked up immediately and enjoyed the hell out of it. It's an epic fantasy where we follow 4 characters from different levels of society who are caught up in a nationwide conspiracy. Now, I do want to mention that this world is brutal, but it's also full of hope. The story focuses on folks who are marginalized, victimized, and demonized by society. It's a story of how they choose not so much simply to fight back, but to try and make a better society for everyone. There is so much action into this, you're never going to be bored. The author has a great eye for detail as they feel both chaotic yet organized. Sometimes action scenes are hard to follow, so I just wanted to mention that. It fills the void of the story and didn't deter it in any way for me. This is probably one of the more enjoyable surprises I've had from this year. It's fast-paced, but also very introspective and ambitious. Also, this author has a video game coming out soon that he helped write, Clockwork Revolution, and that has me so hyped. This kind of gave me an idea on the quality, you know? And last but not least, the book that made it on this list is a very heavy one, The Trials of Asphalt. So I'm very happy to finally be talking about this book. I finished it about a month ago, and it's been hard to wrap my head around because it surprised me in the best way possible. It only took chapter 1 for me to get that ooh, I'm going to love this feeling. We are introduced to a world with two nations brewing against each other, and we follow multiple characters in the midst of it all, just your classic epic fantasy. Actually, this is grimdark fantasy. I believe it's labeled as such, but the world felt really epic. This book isn't for the faint of heart. It is brutal. Every character is introduced in a very brutal way, and it's super dark. Like I said, it's labeled as grimdark, as you're going to get those really bloody, gruesome scenes. Very Joe Abercrombie and John Gwynne we also have a school setting that made the world much more intriguing and even fun to read. I feel like without that school setting, this book might not have made it on this list, but the setting just really opened up the world for me, and it kind of added that little lighthearted touch a little bit. Anyways, I highly recommend this, and that you pick it up not knowing much about the story, because I think that's the best way to go into books like this, where every character is not safe and everything is measured by danger and deceit. The sequel to this, The Buzzard's Bull, is also out, which I need to get my hands on. Alrighty everyone, so that was a decent stack of books that I have read this year so far that I have really enjoyed. It's a mix of both 4-star and 5-star reviews, because 4 stars deserve to be absolutely loved and adored as well. Like this video if you liked, it really helps me out. Subscribe if you're not, I'd love to have you here, and thank you to those of you who are subscribed. I really appreciate it and giving me the time to come back to booktube. I know I've been away, but I'm getting there. Anyways, until we meet again, happy reading.